Hello. We are in the second week of the Easter season, and I was asked a little while ago to give a reflection, a homily-like talk on the readings for the week, and I was seriously considering doing that. And then I had reason to kind of rethink and maybe put that off until next week or at least next time, because I happen to be walking through my living room at home, and I don't have a ton of art hanging everywhere, but I was going through the living room and I realized that the picture on the left of the screen that I have here, which hangs in my living room, it depicts the gospel that we heard on the second Sunday of Easter last week, the story of the upper room and Thomas not being there, and so on. And then I noticed that the next painting, which is the one on the right of the screen, depicts the gospel for this coming week, the third Sunday of Easter. And I thought, well, that's kind of just a kind of an interesting coincidence. And because I noticed it, I thought, well, maybe I'm going to work from there. So instead of having just words to share with you, actually work from these two pictures, which are favorites of mine. And I know that they hang in my house, but sometimes you don't really think about how they fit together, or that one is from one week of the Sunday Mass and the one is from the next week. I don't think I've ever noticed that. But I did, and so we're going to have a chance to kind of explore last week's gospel and this coming week's gospel by looking at some paintings. Well, as I mentioned, this painting depicts the gospel for the second Sunday of Easter, Divine Mercy Sunday, which is the upper room on the night of the resurrection. The apostles are in the upper room and they've got the door locked because they're afraid of people coming and getting them. And Jesus appears to them and he says, "Peace be with you." Now, if I were Jesus, I would probably not, this is the first appearance to the apostles, I would probably not have said to them, "Peace be with you." I probably would have said something like, "Hey guys, thanks for all the help on Thursday night." But Jesus has got a different approach and he wants them to come to faith in him, and so he appears there. And they have an encounter, but we're told that Thomas is not there. So we're told that the next week they are again gathered in the upper room just like before. Jesus comes into the room without opening the door. And Thomas this time is there, and Jesus knows that Thomas had not believed the other apostles, that he had really risen and appeared to them. So he tells Thomas, if you don't believe, come on over and see for yourself. You can touch my hands, you can touch my feet, you can put your hand in my side, whatever you want to do. Quit not believing, believe. And the wonder of this painting is that it takes place at that really critical moment where Thomas is there. And in the gospel, we don't know what Thomas does, if he does anything other than say to Jesus, "My Lord and my God." We don't know if he actually goes and checks anything, checks out the hands, the feet, Jesus' side. But in this picture, there is no doubt what's going on. And it's not really even necessarily Thomas's initiative. Thomas is the figure right here. Because as we see in the picture, his finger is going into Jesus' side, right over there. But Jesus has his left hand on Thomas's wrist, and he is holding it. He's like saying, don't pull back. I'm gonna guide your wrist right where it needs to be, so that you can put your finger in my side and realize I'm really here and that I'm really risen from the dead. So Thomas has kind of an interesting expression on his face. I'm sure he doesn't know what he's supposed to do. Jesus is looking down, I think, rather lovingly to Thomas and the other apostles. We don't really know who they are. They're also watching the scene. But the wonder of this particular picture is it captures that definitive moment where, at least in this understanding of what's happening, Thomas cannot but come to realize that Jesus has really resurrected from the dead, because his finger really is going into his side. So it's a very powerful moment. Everyone's kind of looking subdued. But what a wondrous moment that's got to be for Thomas, who realizes that this really is the Lord Jesus in front of him, and that who is touching him right at this moment. So again, kind of subdued, kind of a darkish painting, and at the same time, a great moment of revelation and joy. Now, the painting that we see here is by the same artist, an artist by the name of Caravaggio. Both of them were painted around the year 1600. And this particular painting shows the gospel refers to the gospel that we are going to hear this weekend, the disciples on the road to Emmaus. The Emmaus story, just like the story of the upper room and the apostles in the upper room, both of these happen on Easter Sunday night. And in this accounting from Luke's gospel, we have Jesus walking down the road who finds himself falling in with some other people leaving Jerusalem and heading down to the city of Emmaus, which we're told is about 7 miles away. And Jesus, starts to talk to him as you do when you meet people on the road. And they're a buzz about what happened to Jesus over the past couple days. And he pretends not to know what they're talking about. And they say, "Are you the only guy who doesn't know what we're talking about? How did you not hear this?" Well, they begin to have a discussion, which the gospel goes into. And it gets very interesting for the disciples walking on the road. And they want Jesus to have dinner with them because they'd still like to, have them keep talking. It's getting dark. It's time to eat. So Jesus is willing to come in with them and share a meal. And we're told that it's when he is at the table sharing the meal with them that by the breaking of the bread that happens there, these disciples recognize that it is Jesus. Now, of course, the mystery is, why couldn't they tell physically that this was Jesus before? And we're not told the answer to that. The Gospels seem to suggest that after Jesus rose from the dead, he was the same person in many different ways, and yet his body was glorified and he was a little bit different. And whatever the reason of the description, people had a difficult time, even people who knew him well, had a difficult time recognizing that it was Jesus until he said something like their name, or he did something like broke the bread. Then suddenly their eyes are open. So this picture, again, like the other one, captures a vital moment, but this one has a lot more, in my opinion, a lot more energy in it, a lot more dynamism, because we have Jesus sitting at the table and his hand is extended in blessing over the food that he's got there. And we are to believe, from looking at the painting, that gesture is what's making the people at dinner with him recognize that it's Jesus. If you look at the gentleman on the left, who looks like he's wearing a green sweater with the kind of a patch on the elbow where the thing is ripped, he is gripping the hands of his chair and his elbows are bent like he's about ready to launch out of that chair, or at least pretty far away from the table. His eyes, his head are just glued on Jesus and what he's doing. He can't believe what's going on. The gentleman on the right, who looks like he has a conch shell hanging from his smock of some kind, or his vest, is also incredibly surprised, and all he can do is throw his arms out to the side in complete wonder, like, what the heck is this? He's also looking at what Jesus is doing, but you can just tell by look. The other guy in the background with the kind of the white beanie on, I don't know why he isn't surprised. Maybe he doesn't know what's quite going on yet. But the other two guys are just about ready to leap up and just complete wonderment that Jesus is with them. And, the power of the picture to me is the fact that both Jesus and the two guys on the left and the right almost seem to be coming out of the picture into our space. It kind of brings us into the picture because it's so dynamic that you can almost picture like you're standing on the other end of that table with someone like his elbow is coming right out of the picture. The guy on the right, his hand, it almost seems like it's reaching out of the frame. And the way that Jesus' hand is there and kind of foreshortened so that it looks shorter than it actually is, all of that looks like these figures are coming right out of that picture to us. And I think the point of the picture, and I think the point of the gospel, is that when you recognize Christ present among you, you should be in wonder. And that message should reach out and grab you. It might surprise you when you first recognize it, but when you see that power, it should have an effect. And wouldn't life be wonderful, and wouldn't the church be different, and wouldn't we be different if we responded with that kind of energy and wonder when we recognize that Christ is among us as he is in many different ways? So this picture is, again, very different in a lot of ways from the other one, but it is the same artist. It's painted about the same time, and yet it's got a message of hope and power and dynamism that really kind of literally reaches out and grabs us. So maybe when you're hearing the gospel reading this weekend, you can think of this picture and what's going on. It's certainly what I think of when I hear the story of the road to Emmaus. This moment, these figures, Jesus in the center, kind of helps make it a little bit livelier sometimes when we have something that we can picture. This is what I'm going to be thinking of when I hear the gospel.